Hey, I'm Christine Chipman, and I'm making a video on the learning theory of identity. Identity, who someone is. And we discover this by looking at our qualities, our beliefs, our habits, decisions, etc. So if I was going to say, my identity is Christine, and I have qualities and beliefs that I can learn and help other people learn as well. This kind of makes me different from a lot of other people. When we try to learn, it's really important to have a good idea of who you are, of your identity, because who and what you think you are can really limit or expand your possibilities. And we don't always see ourselves very clearly. Come on. So let me give you an analogy of what I mean. What if this was you just looking at, this is me in the mirror. And then a friend comes along and tells you a little bit more, and you've just, expanded your whole view. Another friend comes along, let's call this one a teacher, and whoa, now you've got a plane defined and, infinite possibilities. And what happens if you can get a fourth? Let's call it experience. Well, 4 points can actually define a three-dimensional object. So we're kind of very one-dimensional if this is all we know. The pretty obvious things. So we don't know the possibilities that are existing out there. So let's look at what they are. Now, some things are within my view, past, present, future, but I'm kind of narrow-minded. I can't see all the exciting other things that could actually happen. I mean, when I started grad school, did I know anything about instructional technology? Not really. Never heard of it before. Uh, Data analysis, etc., etc. These are things that I had to have other sources helping me see possibilities I'd never seen before. So, as a grad student, I'm going to tell you about 3 papers that talk about identity, and hopefully we can use them to examine how we can learn more about our own identities. See if we can get some superheroes helping us. So, the first paper came from a couple of researchers going into a high school and saying, all right, we're going to look at identity. So they started off with the basketball team. And they found 3 really cool things. It was, focused interaction and feelings of support. They found the basketball players were able to make decisions, and they were able to express themselves and feel very valued. And these are my nice conclusions right here. Then they went to the math class of a couple of the basketball players. And in the math class, they didn't find their players actually engaging with the domain. There wasn't a lot of interaction or even feeling competent. They didn't really have an integral role to take, and they didn't really express themselves. So let me just take all these things. If the value of things add up and give you an identity in a location, then that classroom had a pretty poor situation going on. Okay, the second paper was interesting because it talked about positioning. And I had to look up the word positioning. What it actually means is to take something and put it in a very specific spot, or someone in a particular place or way, and you can position yourself or others can be positioning you. Come on, there we go. So they went and looked at two science classes for middle schoolers, and they found that some of the students had been positioned, either by themselves or by the teacher, into saying, I'm not good at science. Just ask Mrs. K. I can't do science. From the teacher, she's good for a Latina, or she doesn't even try, which sounds, pretty, well, yeah, she's not trying, but it's also a position of this person is not trying, and it's not giving them the ability, well, the possibility to be someone who does try. So the researchers came in with a project-based learning project. It's really interesting, which, come here, involved sewing with a conductive thread and using diodes, which is really cool because as they made bracelets that lit up, they were entering STEM in a way that isn't typical. There was no computer involved and no big fancy microscopes. It was a needle with some thread and some cloth. But they were designing circuitry and debugging the programs, which lights are going to flash on and off, and they had a program. So it was da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, or whichever they wanted to do. And as a result, these two girls who had been positioned were able to take themselves out of that position and start seeing themselves in a different light. So this is really fun. I'd do it even if I didn't have to. I can help people finding short circuits. Oh, just keep touching the mouse and it just bounces around. And even the teacher was able to express different positions. The girl that wouldn't even try, well, she's doing extra work. She's never done this before. All of a sudden, that possibility came into view. She's a tough student, but now she's focused. So, La La Land to focused, that's a change of position. So the takeaways from that, what position are we looking at the world? What is your particular place or way? Are you seeing yourself as competent, as unable, as shy, as, okay, we have positions and we've put ourselves there and other people have done it too. But in identifying those positions, it's so important to figuring out how it's affecting your identity. And once you can see that, how can you start connecting home position and work position and school position and relationship position? Can you be the same person? That's more possibilities. Third, it's actually really important to say, am I limiting myself because I'm seeing myself as backwards in this and unexperienced in that? And finally, we actually need to try new things, because trying new things opens up new possibilities. The girls were sewing with conductive thread. What's new that you can try? Okay, the third paper is just as interesting, and we'll call it science identity. The researchers here were trying to see if they could help some middle school students change their identity to include science as they went through a virtual environment in their ecology class. And it was a pretty cool environment. There was a pond and trees and stuff. And then this situation came up that all of a sudden fish were floating dead on the water. And so they started looking around for why. Were the predators just leaving pieces behind? Was there some sort of disease in the water? What about the environment itself? What was going on in the environment? Well, they needed to investigate all these possibilities. So they were looking at the people, the traffic, the factories, the air, the bugs. And as they went through, they started realizing that they could eliminate some of the possibilities. And eventually they realized that the farmers had fertilizer that was being washed into the pond and it was killing the fish. So, as the students were talking about the project, they said, yeah, we understand ecology. It's not just looking at trees, it's really interconnected. But their real enthusiasm was that they got to choose. The teacher wasn't standing up with a worksheet or a lecture. It was sort of a guide on the side situation where, okay, we need to go in this direction, but you get to choose how you're going to do it. The students didn't end up saying science is my new identity, but they ended up saying I can do science. So given all three of these papers, can we use them to expand what we know about ourselves? Okay, looking at the first paper, examining identity in a domain. Asking serious questions like what makes me feel confident or valued? Am I putting myself in a bad place? Have I tried something new that was possibly hard but could still expand my knowledge of what I really could do? Have I made choices and actually gave myself permission to make mistakes and to accept responsibility for those? Total identity expansion and exploring. You're watching my video. You're obviously very good at exploring. So if we take all these ways of identifying ourselves, we actually start to know what we're doing in a three-dimensional way, a broader view that we can look from more than one side. And it is important to expand your identity. It's how you learn about your competencies, your capacity, and it brings confidence. You're better able to learn and grow if you have a better idea of what your identity is. So, you may not know your full potential, but you know a whole lot more. Identity, who you think you are, continuously updated. So, thank you for watching. I'm Christine Chipman, a graduate student at Utah State University.